I think that we could start, okay? So this is the quick, fun, and unconventional using Backstage as your CV. What is Backstage? Backstage is an open platform for creating developer portals. It was created by Spotify. And in this presentation, I'm going to use Backstage in a slightly different way to create something like a CV, and thus the unconventional in the title of this presentation. So welcome. My name is Ioannis. I'm a software engineer. I'm writing Java mostly for almost 2 decades. I do a lot of open source, and I'm also a member at the Apache Software Foundation, where I had the privilege to work in a lot of interesting projects, including Apache Camel, Karaf, Service Mix, and more. Since 2012, I've been working for Red Hat, and I live in the strange world between Java and Kubernetes, mostly Java, but I do a lot of Kubernetes-related stuff. And in this space, I've also created a few interesting projects, including the Fabricate Kubernetes client, Spring Cloud Kubernetes, Decorate, and more. The last couple of months, I'm working on a very cool project called Quarkus, which is a framework that makes Java fast, lean, and very fun to use. However, I've been doing open source and working for Red Hat for almost 12 years now, and I'm starting to get a little bit bored. So I felt that it's a good time to start dusting off my CV, and I wanted to create something that would stand out in today's markets and today's needs, which is a very competitive period and a very, let's say, weird time to switch jobs. So I wanted to do something, let's say, different. I wanted something creative, and I wanted something that I could use to directly demonstrate my skills. So I'm not sure if you've ever had the chance to witness some of those weird and very creative CVs that you often see on YouTube and stuff like that. But I have some examples for you. And I will start with the case of John Doe, which is a graphic designer, and created something like a comic in order to showcase his skills, his artistic skills, but also to list things like education, interest, and other kind of stuff in a very creative and very entertaining and fun way. Of course, this is not a real CV, it's AI generated. But I'll move to the second case, Alex Baker, which is a baker, of course, and he created this weird cake that also lists some of his past experiences and stuff, and yet demonstrates his artistic skills and also his cooking abilities, techniques, and stuff like that. However, we are software engineers, so I could not leave out the case of Miss Jane Script, which is a JavaScript developer. But however, her CV is not currently available because it's under construction, because she's currently in the process of migrating, thank you, from framework to framework XYZ, which was released, I think, yesterday or something. And I also wanted to create something that would be hot. And I went to some of my colleagues and said, hey, can you tell me what's really hot these days? And they told me, yeah, I've been to KubeCon Paris a couple of weeks ago, and all people were talking about AI. Who would have guessed, right? And they also talk about a very cool new project called Backstage. And I said, bingo, this is very interesting. So what is Backstage? Again, Backstage is an open platform for creating and building developer portals. It was open sourced by Spotify a couple of years ago, and the main goal of Backstage was to streamline software development and maintenance process. So what were the problems that Spotify encountered and created Backstage for? So they needed to do something about developer onboarding. An organization, to move fast, to scale, to disrupt the market, and stuff like that, needs to attract the interest of developers, but they also, when they do hire those developers, they need to get them up to speed as soon as possible. So they need to get them attuned to the ecosystem of the organization, the frameworks, the technologies that are under the radar of the organization, and all those kind of things. What other challenges did Spotify have? Spotify was one of the adopters of the microservices architectures, which created a sort of a chaos. From usual monolithic applications, they started breaking down things. We had things deployed in multiple different deployment targets, deployments on-prem, deployments in the cloud, Lambdas, and stuff like that. So it started becoming an issue to, let's say, track which app component runs where, who is responsible for each component, what are the APIs exposed, and what are the APIs consumed from each component. And when something broke, it was sometimes even challenging to track the owner of those components, which was kind of a problem. So they thought, OK, how we are going to solve this problem? Let's create a software catalog to start cataloging all our software components so that it's easier to track where's the source for all those components, where is deployed, each component where is deployed, what are the APIs that it consumes, the documentation, and in some cases, to also catalog some software templates that could be used to guide new hires and newcomers to easily create new software components and stuff like that. And at some point, they even started adding DevOps self-servicing capabilities inside those components so that they create new software projects and also have them configured with the use of GitOps and stuff to automate deployments and things for all those components. So in practice, the software catalog is a catalog of all the skills available within the organization. And when you use that in a weird use case like the one I'm presenting here, it's pretty much a catalog of all your skills. So I'm going to take a step back and show you the skill catalog that I created for myself using Backstage. I think that I should mention that Backstage is not a product that you take off the shelf and you start using. It's a platform, it's a framework that you use in order to build your own developer portal, which is something that implies that you have to do some development yourself. When created, it's a React project that also uses Node in the backend, and usually developers either do things like adding, removing extensions and stuff like that, but also writing some code. And since I wanted to show off my engineering capabilities and my coding abilities, for my personal Backstage, I thought that it would be a very cool idea to somehow extend it and go beyond the limitations of a software catalog, and I expanded it so that I can also list things like presentations. And I even took things one step further, and I made it possible to present those presentations directly from the UI of Backstage, which is exactly what we are seeing right now. So this is actually Backstage, is not a presentation framework, which embeds the presentation inside it. And I have a whole section which contains the presentations that I've been doing recently, like the one that you are currently watching. Of course, it makes more sense to spend some time and walk you through the software catalog and the software components that I've added in my catalog, which contains things from my blog to my website and the projects that I'm developing and using in my day job. One of them, as mentioned, is Quarkus. By clicking to Quarkus, I get to the component overview. I'm seeing that it's a software component, that it is listed as a framework. I do have some links to the GitHub repo, to the home page of the project. Let me click that. Right, supersonic subatomic Java. And also to the project creator for Quarkus, which is code.quarkus.io, which is what usually people use in order to bootstrap new Quarkus projects. What's more interesting is, of course, the source code, but even more interesting, what is going on the right side of the screen in the relation section. And please let me know if it's large enough for you to see in the back, or if I do. Yeah, OK, let me increase the size. Yeah, it's not very presentation friendly, I know, but I will try to walk you through what's going on. So this is a relations graph that is generated by Backstage. On the right side of the graph, I have software components that I have added in my catalog. I mentioned Decorate, I mentioned Kubernetes client, and those components are components that the Quarkus component depends on. So it's a very nice way for me to showcase the relationships between the projects that I'm developing, and it's also a very nice way to show someone that in many cases, in order to develop something, I can go many layers below and develop in the whole stack of the project. On the left side of the screen, I do have some other components, which are components that are using the Quarkus component. And for example, I have the code generator for Quarkus, code.quarkus.io, which itself is part of the Quarkus group. And something interesting I'm seeing here is that it exposes an API. So I can click on that API, and I can even navigate to the definition of the API, which is very cool because I get the chance to demonstrate my API authoring abilities to everyone that's reading my CV. And I can even do things like allowing users to invoke the operations directly by calling execute, which sends a request directly to code.quarkus.io and gets the response back, which is something that's very cool, both from my CV, but even when someone uses Backstage in the context of an organization, because something like that allows teams to communicate the APIs and the contracts that their services are meant to use for communicating, which is very, very useful, and this is also one of the reasons why Spotify wanted something like that. Another interesting cool thing that I have in my catalog is the catalog of software templates. And here I have created some templates that anyone can use in order to bootstrap new projects and do cool things with the technologies that I've included in my catalog. So for example, one can create a regular Quarkus application, or it can create a chatbot using Quarkus, or maybe a Kubernetes operator using Quarkus and stuff like that. And in some cases, they can even do things like, okay, let's create a gRPC client, for example, that consumes one of the, that consumes one of the APIs that are listed in the catalog. So for example, I can use that in order to directly create a client for those APIs, which gives the ability for someone reading my CV to automatically create a demo application that uses that CV directly. I can use the interface of my Backstage UI to even register as components existing applications. So far, we've seen libraries that I work on, frameworks that I work on, and stuff like that. Let's now add a different component, which is a live application that it is currently deployed in my Kubernetes cluster. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pass the URL to that software component and import that to my catalog. And once I do that, I see a slightly different UI, and I have some different sections. So for example, this is an application created using the Create Quarkus application software template that, let me show the source, that along with the source code, it also generates stuff like Argo CD applications and Helm charts for easing up the deployment of this application to my Kubernetes cluster. And I can see the state of Argo CD from the CD section, which communicates with my Argo CD installation. And from what I can see directly from here, it's in sync state. So I can showcase this way that I'm not just a developer, but I also have, let's say, op capabilities. And I can also demonstrate the Kubernetes pipelines that this app is using. So for example, I have a pipeline that clones the project, creates some VMs for running dev services inside that cluster, doing a build, image build, and stuff like that. And in the end, the app is up and running and successfully deployed on my Kubernetes cluster. So this way, with this, I think that I can conclude this, this presentation. This was my personal catalog of things, and I hope that I managed to showcase some of the core features of Backstage, like the software catalog, the software template catalog, and the ability to plug in external tools to your Backstage installation so that you can have things like integration with platform-related things and apps that you use in your organization. Of course, it's not seriously recommended to use Backstage as your CV. It's more of a fun way of showcasing Backstage features in 15 minutes. Thank you for joining. It was a very long week and a very long day today, and I didn't expect such a turnaround for a Saturday. Thank you.